Today in episode 70 of the podcast, we will be reviewing the second Marvel film of the year in Thunderbolts and episodes 4 through 6 of Andor Season 2. We'll also be giving the rundown of the top stories of the week, including the first details on Shogun Season 2. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and this is We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Please stick around for the end of the episode where we will be announcing the winners of our latest giveaway. And as always, please don't forget to give us a like and subscription on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you're getting our episodes when they drop every single Monday. Also, if you're listening to us in the audio room, please give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And go to willbringthepopcorn.com where you can get access to all our archive footage, our social media information, as well as our merch store so you continue to help support the podcast in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.
And so we're going to kick the news off this week with details on Shogun Season 2. So if you've listened or watched the podcast at all, you know we've been a little mixed on them doing more seasons because the first season was near perfection. Like, it was so brilliantly done. It was such a deep, engrossing, emotional story that you didn't really... It left open for stuff to do, but it left it off in a really good place. Yeah. But, you know, they've already announced at least 2 more seasons of Shogun, but we did get details that it's going to be taking place 10 years after Shogun Season 1. We do have Hiroku Sanada, who's Lord Toranaga, and Cosmo Jarvis, who is John Blackthorne. They will both be reprising the roles. We probably get a few more in there. Of course, there's some that we won't get to see again unless it's a flashback or something else like that. But it's interesting they're going to jump ahead 10 years because it's quite a big gap from where we left it because, you know, they're even in the books-wise, there are some battles they didn't do, some other things they didn't, so maybe they could retool and reuse some of the stuff from the book. But this is one of those situations where, you know, it's a series of novels, but they take place so many years away from each other. They don't use the same character, so they're kind of going outside of what the novel was now and doing their own thing, and that always kind of leaves you up like, we've had some situations in the last several years that have shown that when it goes past the source material, the quality isn't as good as it was when they were fully following the source material.
Sure, and, you know, I'm still on the hill of it not being completely necessary based on what it is, because there's no real drama that you can infer from this story now. Because before it was like, you get attached to these characters and they meet tragic ends and everything like that, but Season 1 literally ends telling you, like, he was victorious and he was this great leader for such a long time, and there's no drama in that anymore. Like, what's the point of telling these stories? They can still be fun stories to tell, but there's no stakes to them, right? So, you know, like when he gets in a conflict, you're not going to worry about him dying because you know the outcome already, because they kind of spoiled it for you at the end of Season 1. Like, I don't understand, like, what they're trying to do or what stories they're wanting to tell in the meantime, because you know where the end game is. But there's so many other instances of that where you're like, okay, we know where these characters are going, and other shows are going back and telling stories of in-between times and other things like that. But I don't know. I'm still on the fence on this one because, like you said, Season 1 was so good and it's so fantastically done that I'm hoping it doesn't tarnish anything by going forward with more stories. But, I mean, we're going to get it anyway, so let's kind of take them what they do. The benefit of knowing it is, you know, we know where they're going, but now it gives them the opportunity to have fun with it and kind of tell some interesting stories potentially, but there's not as much stakes involved for the characters because we know where they wind up.
It still feels like this is a studio decision. Like, they're like, hey, this was so extremely popular that we're going to move on with more seasons, whether you want to be a part of it or not. So the creatives and everyone behind it, well, like, and we don't know if that's the case, but it does kind of feel that way. And they probably were like, hey, well, we've got to get on this or they're going to do it without us and make it even worse, because it was planned as a mini series. It wasn't planned to go past one season, so they ended it in that knowledge and that fashion and everything. And it does feel like it's one of those studio decisions. Well, it was so popular, we're just going to continue it on and keep it going for a very long time. But I do have faith because it's got the same teams and same actors and stuff behind it. Who's, Hiroku is one of the executive producers, who's, the main star of it. So I have some faith in that, but it's not because we don't want to see more. If they do it fantastically, you'll hear me raving about it. It's not going to be me going back on anything. It's because I'm worried about it not being as good because season 1 was so brilliant. That was a 10 out of 10 series. That was such a fantastic. You can go back and see all of our reviews on each episode in our archives here. It was such a fantastic series. That's why we're so please don't mess it up. Don't go back into it because it's so good. Because it can tarnish a little bit of your memory of if they come back, or if shows last too long. Same thing like Lost was such a brilliant series, but it had such a controversial ending, and we all know that one was stretched out a bit longer because the studio wanted it to go longer. Same thing, we feel like The Walking Dead was probably stretched a little too long as well. So we have a lot of examples of shows and stuff going on, Game of Thrones as well, going on a little bit maybe too long, and it ruining the overall impact of it.
Yeah, and it could, but we got some information about this season coming up. Looks like they're going to start filming in January of next year, and it probably won't see the light of day until the following TV season, probably not fall of 2026, but maybe spring of 2027 is when we could see the show see the light of day. So we're just going to kind of hold our collective breath and wait until the show comes out. But it's funny you mentioned that, because one of the characters, unfortunately, that won't be coming back is Anna Sawai's character, who was absolutely fantastic and brilliant. But moving into another story now, she has been cast in the new David Leitch heist thriller How to Rob a Bank, and it's going to be starring Nicholas Hoult and Pete Davidson as well. So it seems like her trajectory is on the upswing now. She's starting to be cast in more movies and things, and I couldn't be happier for her.
I want to see her in everything. She was brilliant as Mariko in Shogun. Honestly, she was the best performance of the entire series. Fantastic. And there was a lot of incredible performances in it, but she just stole every single scene she was in. She had such heart, dramatics, emotion, everything that she was a part of with Shogun. That's one thing I'm also sad about, because she was one of the best parts of it. And unless it's a flashback, she's not going to be returning for Shogun season 2. Yeah. But it's interesting that the first big project we hear out of that is going to be a heist thriller that's with Pete Davidson. And it's kind of mixed, and it could be a comedy. It doesn't say it's a comedy, but Pete Davidson may be trying some different things as well, because Nicholas Hoult, he's done comedy and he's done serious and action stuff. So we don't exactly know kind of what the tone of this film is going to be, but you got Anna in it. I'm going to go see it. Yeah,
and I love to see her getting bigger opportunities, throwing her names, into these films with these bigger name actors, because she's absolutely outstanding. Her performance, and that was top notch. We called it way early in the game that she was going to win an Emmy for it, and she did, deservedly so. She was amazing and fantastic.
To win everything.
Yeah, her performance in that was incredible, and it's going to be missed in Shogun season 2. But good on her for carrying that trajectory and that upward swing in her career. And now she's going to start starring in these bigger movies that I'm excited to see literally everything that she's going to be in moving forward.
Absolutely. So moving on to our next story, we do have details on the next film by Dev Patel. So this last one that he put out was Monkey Man. You can go back in our archives and see what we thought about that. But he's doing another revenge action thriller. This time it's set back in the 1300s. It's based around knights ransacking a village and someone going back after them for revenge, and it could be really interesting. It was a little mixed on Monkey Man. It had some real brilliant parts to it, but it had a few things, especially when it involved the mask and how little time that we actually got him in that. But the action was, quality. It tried to hit you with some hard emotion. So I'm really looking forward to see what he does with this, because we could get a fun, really interesting. He's going to star in it as well, as he did with Monkey Man. So it's going to be really interesting what he does now with a period piece after Monkey Man, which was set in a more modern location, to go back and do this involving knights and medieval times.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. But Monkey Man is, it was marred, as we discussed when we reviewed the film when we watched it, but it was marred by COVID, and it was interrupted with a lot of other things.
It barely got made.
Messed with a ton of the production, but some of the stuff that he was doing for that film are just legendary stories coming out of it. The things that he put his body through to get that movie made were incredible. Go back and look all of that up. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he's got with a full slate and a full time, and no worries about writer strikes or anything like that that could potentially hamper this. And he gets full time to make a movie. I'm excited to see what he could come up with, because you saw the potential in the Monkey Man, what could have been, and what we wound up getting for that film. And I still got a lot of enjoyment out of it, so I'm excited to see what he does next for sure.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Monkey Man you had COVID, you had so much other stuff that was taking it down, you had major injuries that he had to film through, you had basically the production was going to shut down a day or two before they were going to start filming until someone came in and saved it with financing and stuff. Like, it was a very rocky production. So hopefully this one's much smoother for him, and we can maybe see the full weight of what he wants to do with a revenge thriller.
Yeah, I agree, and it's something worth keeping an eye on too. I want to move us into our next story now. There's a recent game that's come out that's gotten a lot of attention, and it's Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which is well over 1 million copies sold already. It's like exploded in popularity in just a couple short weeks that it's been out now. Incredible voice cast, but it looks like it's going to be the next video game getting a major film adaptation for it. And I'm all on board with it. I love the story that they're telling in the game. I haven't gotten a chance to dive in fully and play it yet. I know you've played it, but the voice acting in it is incredible, and it stars one of our favorite MCU actors as the main character in the story, and hopefully he gets a chance to play him in the movie.
Yeah, it just came out on April 24th. It's available on Xbox Game Pass and PC Game Pass. You can also buy it on PlayStation and wherever. They actually sold out of physical copies because they didn't expect the game to do as well as it did. But yeah, Charlie Cox could potentially come back and play the lead, depending on when they decide to film it and what his MCU responsibilities might be. We're still holding out hope he's going to show up in Doomsday or Secret Wars. It depends on just how fast track this is, because they're still looking for a director, but they're casting. I assume they're still writing a script. Again, it came out 2 weeks ago. They've got a lot of work to do to get that ready. But I mean, it's a game that has a kind of film ready script to it. It has a very dark, emotional story to it. It deals with basically kind of the end of days. Once people reach a certain age, that's kind of it for them, and they're basically taken, and you have people who are within their last year or two of life in that age are sent off on expeditions to go try to defeat the Paintress to help society, the world, survive and move on forward. But they're, it's counting down into the end, and it's very heavily emotional. It's very high fantasies, but it's going to be really interesting to see how that turns into a film, because it could be fantastic. But I'd love to see Charlie Cox return for that. I know a lot of fans online are talking about, well, if he can't do it, maybe Robert Pattinson, if he's available, but he's still trying to get the Batman Part 2 finished. He's going to be in Dune. He's very high demand right now, so I don't know if that'll be something that he would be able to do either.
Yeah, and it's a really cool, really heavy story, like you said, but it's one that could lend itself to film very, pretty easily if they get the script right. It's one that I'm excited to dive in to actually play the game as well. I know it's like one of the next ones on my list to play, but excited that it could be turned into a film too, and we'll see who all either reprises their role, like Charlie Cox if he can. Hopefully he's tied up doing Daredevil until he's 90, much like Hugh Jackman is going to be for Wolverine. But, if that's the case, and it's right, I would love to see him get the opportunity to do this too, because for everything I've heard about it, and him in that game is just top notch. And, I want him to get all the opportunities anyway.
Yeah, and he could be with Andy Serkis. He's got his Lord of the Rings film he's doing. He's also somewhat ties to MCU, although his character is kind of wrapped up in that as well. So he could potentially, show up his character. But it could be a really fun, interesting, different type of film, because it is high fantasy mixed in with some really deep emotional. I just can see the environments because of what I've already gone through. There's some really unique and interesting visuals that they could do. It's going to have a big budget to be able to do this thing right, because it has like huge cities, but it also has like an underwater realm and other stuff. Like it's going to be an expensive production, but yeah, they're fast tracking it. You've got the producers behind the Sonic the Hedgehog films are going to be doing it, but yeah, it's been out 2 weeks and it's already becoming a film, which is kind of crazy. Like we've got 2 games already being fast tracked into film right now.
Yeah, and that's crazy. But you have a team like the team behind the Sonic films who've done such a phenomenal job of bringing a video game into film. Like if they're behind the helm of it, it gives me high hopes that we're going to get high quality of it when it does see the light of day.
So I want to move us into our next story, which is a little more controversial. You have Natasha Lyonne has announced she will write, direct, and star in a new film called Uncanny Valley. It's going to do traditional filmmaking, but it's going to be heavily mixed with AI. Now, they did say it's going to be licensed and copyright-free AI stuff, but there's a lot of controversy over that, using AI for a film. We know we're going to be seeing it. You can look through all of our episodes. We've talked about AI a lot, how it should be a tool for people to use, but not to replace things. And, you have people trying to create movies with AI, and you can see just how bad and uncanny it is. So we don't know if this is going to be something that's looking at it in a good way or in a bad way, just to maybe, hey, this is their way of showing how bad it's going to be to try to replace parts of movies with AI, because she was known for showing up at the strikes about AI and picketing and showing her support for the writers and actors for what they were trying to achieve with AI, and now she's doing an AI film.
Yeah, it definitely comes across as hypocritical on the surface level for sure. But yeah, we've beaten this topic to death about AI and how we feel about it, and how it's, it can be a tool used to help guide along certain things, but it shouldn't be used to replace the human element in certain things. Like, I think we're still like a ways away from AI really being able to do that, just because of, things I've seen as far as like images being created. While they can be effective, there's still a long way to go to get it to where it's, it could have that emotional depth and that heart that could come from just a human being, and, people's emotions and, creativity and everything like that. But I'm very, very on the fence on this whole situation, just because on the surface it sounds like an awful premise, just to lean so heavily from someone who was very much on the side of, writers and went and picketed it, and now they're making a movie that's going to be using it heavily. It feels like so hypocritical, and so, like I said, it's just a surface level. I don't know all the details that went into, what they negotiated to get this done, to put this together, but it doesn't feel right, and hopefully it doesn't take us faster down that path of AI just being used to create just about everything. And I don't want that to be the norm, hopefully, moving forward. But we'll see how it goes. I'm just very cautious about this whole thing.
And it's going to be one that we're probably both going to be very mixed on if we actually support it and review it for the podcast and stuff, because we want to get more details on it so we can make that judgment, because we don't want it to, AI lacks emotion and lacks a lot of stuff. But I'm really curious about the copyright clear content, because as far as we know, with every engine that's out there for AI that they're using, it's pulling everything from the internet. So how do you get copyright clearance? How do you know every single thing that it's pulled from? Is it a special AI program that they've written that will give them the source, and then they can go get the licensing for it all? But when AI, 99.9% of what it's creating is using everything that is found online, between film and TV and images and writing and everything else, like, how can you clear everything for AI? Because there's going to be something that's going to be found. We've already found many companies and many things that have used AI that, well, that's my work, or I know this and I know that, or you use this. And we've seen game companies get in trouble for it, that they're using AI for, but people are finding, this is based off of my artwork that you're using here. So I'm really curious how they are going to approach and be able to fully clear of copyrights of people's work, or if people are still going to be like, well, that looks like a character I created, that looks like something I created, that looks like something I did. It's still a very slippery slope with AI and its use in film and TV.
It's messy for sure. And like I said, we've beaten this topic to death on this podcast, talking about it. We will always advocate for people first, and that's kind of where I want to leave it with that, because I still, the more I think about it, the more I talk about it, the more I don't want to watch that film and support it, just based on principles alone. But I'm not going to stand on my soapbox here any more than we already have for that. So I'm going to move us along to another story here, which it's a very interesting one, given where we know the MCU is going and where they've told us they're going based on the films that are coming up. But Ryan Reynolds has come out this week and said that he's working on like kind of an X-Men Deadpool team-up movie, which you know, in Deadpool, he's already kind of worked with other X-Men characters and things like that, as you've seen and all of that. But this script in particular that he's talking about is going to take like 3 or 4 X-Men characters teaming up with the support of Deadpool as a support character, not a lead, which I don't know how you can have that character in almost any type of support role for anything, just because of, you know, his dynamic personality and the nature of that character, how it could really be a support character. But it's interesting to hear that he's working on something like that.
Yeah, because after Deadpool and Wolverine, the way he talked was that he still loves doing the character, but he kind of wants to step it back a little bit because, you know, they was already talking about Deadpool 4, and he joked his wife and kids are going to leave him if he does another Deadpool movie, and he doesn't want Deadpool joining the X-Men or the Avengers, that it feels like that's just not the character if he's part of the team. But that's kind of what I've thought for a while now, when they're done doing the main line of Deadpool movies, that he would become almost like the Stan Lee cameo. He would just show up here and there to crack a joke or help and participate and then go on his way or something. That kind of sounds like what this might be. It might be more X-Men first with a little bit of Deadpool in there. But, you know, Kevin Feige did speak that they have like 10 years of X-Men stuff already planned. Could this, you know, he hasn't pitched it to Marvel yet, so we don't know what exactly has been discussed about the future of Deadpool with Marvel. If he's kind of doing his own thing here, we don't know if he's going to have any involvement in Doomsday or Secret Wars, which you kind of hope and think that they are going to at least be part of Secret Wars, him and Hugh Jackman. But it does sound like he still wants to be Deadpool, but he wants Deadpool to be kind of that more sidekick side. He's maybe in the film for 5 to 10 minutes and not being the main part for 2 to 3 hours. And it could be family-wise or work-wise. We know also this year, him and his wife Blake have had a lot of controversies, which we're not going to go in on that side because both sides, it's just messy.
Yeah.
But they've had a rough year, so it's maybe this is his comfort way of going back to this character and creating something fun and interesting, because he's been writing and working on a lot of different scripts. He's got his like pop band movie that he's writing and working on, and another film I think he's working on as well. So he's got a lot in the pipeline that he's looking at. And it's interesting he's already looking about going back in Deadpool, but in maybe a little more limited way.
Yeah, and I could see that happening, just like having him pop up sporadically and being like a little bit of comic relief to kind of cut through some of the stuff. And, you know, he's literally perfectly made for that role, you know what I mean? Just like you talk about the MCU getting characters spot on with like Robert Downey as Iron Man. And, you know, him as Deadpool couldn't have gone any better than any of us have ever hoped. But yeah, we'll see what the future of Deadpool holds in the MCU for sure. But he even said that the script that he's working on, he hasn't even pitched it to Marvel yet. But like you said, Marvel's got so much tied up in the next 10 years plus that we don't know about yet. Obviously, we know they're going more in that direction of bringing the X-Men and the Fantastic Four stories to the forefront over the next decade, which I'm all for. I'm excited for that future direction. I'm excited to talk more Marvel stuff coming up. But yeah, it's gonna be real interesting to see how some of these other entities will go forward with those other stories, and we'll see how they get incorporated.
I could just see Deadpool like showing up in Secret Wars, and you have Victor Von Doom and all the X-Men and Avengers and everybody fighting, and he's just sitting off to the side with his mask pulled up eating a chimichanga and just saying, hey, you're all doing great, and just going back to eating and not being in the battle or the fight at all.
It would be perfect.
It would be perfect.
Yeah, it'd be a great way.
You could just have him just randomly show up walking in the background, buying something from a food cart, or just like doing something silly in the background, and that's your Deadpool cameo.
Yeah, let him literally be the next Stan Lee and have him show up in everything, and I'm all for it.
So moving on to our next story, we don't really have much detail on it, but fans have been clamoring for them to come back and do something again, and that's Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. They, of course, did Speed together, which was a huge hit for both of them. She returned for the sequel of that, which he did not, but they also teamed back up for The Lake House, which was this more... If I remember right, it was like a supernatural type of romantic, because the lake house and the mailbox and everything had this connection between them. Well, they're reuniting for another film. It's going to be a romantic thriller film, but that's all we know. We don't know a title, exactly what the story's going to be, but that's enough. You got Keanu and Sandra back together again. It's going to bring all of the 90s and 2000s people back to the theaters like, hey, we got these two back together. Let's see what happens.
Speed 3, The Lake House. I don't know. We don't know what it's going to be. But
is that on a houseboat?
It's got to be. It's got to be. The next step is a boat or a jet ski or something.
I mean, they they
technically did.
It was the cruise ship, so yeah, if they did for the Speed 2, so yeah, they need a new vehicle to get lost in.
Yeah,
as we just did.
We'll see what comes of it. But it's exciting to see those two back together. Obviously, Speed was such an iconic film in the '90s for action and everything, and it really helped launch Sandra Bullock's career, especially. But Keanu was still kind of breaking out from his Bill and Ted role and kind of taking on more serious, bigger roles. And I think if we hadn't gotten Speed, we never would have gotten him in The Matrix or, John Wick or anything like that. So it kind of proved that he could be a bankable box office action star too, and not just the silly slapstick comedy stuff that he was doing with Bill and Ted. So excited to see what those two back on screen together, what kind of magic they could create, because you got to love both of them. And it's really cool to see them both together.
Because every time they do an interview, and like they might have interviewed one of them before the other, like I just had Keanu on, I just had Sandra on, and they just love and rave about each other, because there was, as we know with Speed, there was kind of a miss-love connection. They both kind of had a crush on each other back then, but neither of them went for it. So it was kind of that what could have been. And they both talked about it openly, like what could have been. Like we both kind of had that. We were young and had the hots for each other, but nothing really happened. But yeah, Speed, I still go back and watch every now and then. It's such a great, it's a silly premise. I mean, you've got a bus jumping a highway and stuff at a speed that it wouldn't have been able to jump anything on, but just everything that happens. You even got Jeff Daniels in a serious role, which then a lot of people are like, hey, we just watch you in Dumb and Dumber, now you're being serious in Speed. Like, okay, that's awesome.
I have layers.
Because it's like kind of studied as what is a key moment when you see a character realize it's over and it's the end, and it's his moment when he walks into the house of the bomber and of the killer and he realizes what's going to happen. Like that's used by everybody. Like this is a moment where just a facial expression can show you every emotion that you need from a character.
Yeah, it's the way to do it. It was a blueprint for that. I want to move us now into our last news story of the week before we get to our reviews. And it was kind of a late in the week story this week. And it was Jeremy Renner coming out and talking about why Hawkeye Season 2 never saw the light of day. So Hawkeye Season 1 was a very well-received show. It had, as everything Marvel does, it has its fair share of detractors too. But from my opinion, it was a really good show and really well done. And a lot of fans have been clamoring for a second season. Well, Jeremy Renner kind of shed some light on that, talking about what he was offered to come back and play Hawkeye was half of his salary from his original Season 1 salary to come back and do Hawkeye Season 2. And good on him for standing his ground and saying, absolutely not. He pointed to, is it because I had the accident and because,
are you offering me half a salary because you think I'm half of a man after I got ran over?
And to be perfectly clear in what he clarified in some of his statements, this wasn't a Marvel decision necessarily. He pointed more towards what he called penny pinchers at Disney, kind of wanting to negotiate that, and he's not putting the onus on Marvel or anything, but it was one of those hey, if that's where I have to leave my Hawkeye character, so be it. He left the door open to come back and play Hawkeye, obviously, in the future if they get right on terms. And he basically said, if you want me, pay me, kind of thing. Which, good on him, stand your ground, get your money. Don't just come back, for nothing and undersell yourself and what you're worth. But it was a real interesting story that came out, and it had a lot of people talking about it. And a lot of people, just without context, are immediately going and blaming Marvel. But according to him, that's not necessarily where the blame should fall for that.
Yeah, because it's really, as we all know, and we've talked about it a ton here, we have Doomsday coming up. We have Secret Wars. We have a lot of stuff building. If you're going to have Hawkeye come back, it's going to be in one of those two films. But if, there's some bad blood or anything that's potentially building between them because of this, it could mean Hawkeye, may not come back. But it seems like it would be a slam dunk by Marvel to have him come back, where you have a scene where you think someone is going to meet their end or doom here, and you just have an arrow fly through and save, and you get Jeremy Renner in full Hawkeye costume standing there after, everything that's happened with him. He died and came back to life after being ran over by that snowplow and broke so many bones and had it's a miraculous story that he has. He's, promoting his book right now. I have my copy, should be in this week, that I pre-ordered, and it's shipping in now, that I can't wait to read everything about it. But you fans would just stand up and cheer because he's such a likable guy, but he died and he came back to life, and you get him back in a superhero movie. Like, that's going to be one of those almost in-game moments where with Cap picking up a hammer. It's not going to be exactly that level, but you think fans are going to cheer if they see him back being a superhero again. And I hope they can work it out and he can at least show up in Secret Wars, because there have been a lot of rumblings about them still wanting to do a Hawkeye season 2, and it feels like maybe this is a reason why it hasn't happened yet. And we don't know if maybe Kate Bishop was going to be taking a bigger role and he would be a mentor, more side piece, because we feel like we're building up to the Young Avengers and everything else. And maybe his role is going to be reduced, but it's still, when you offer a guy who's been a big part of the MCU, I mean, he first showed up in the first Thor, and he's been in every Avengers movie, and he's been a big part of it. You gave him his own series. Why would you offer him half of his salary to come back for season 2?
Yeah, it's just an absolutely crazy decision. It's almost like because he went on television as opposed to film for the season, like all of a sudden his values decreased to the MCU. I don't agree with that at all, but good on Jeremy Renner for kind of holding his ground. It's like, no, I'm not going to take pennies just to have you get me back in this costume, like and back in this role. Like I'm good. I'd almost love like a Ronin type series too, to kind of like see where he went off the deep end and some adventures that he got to go on as the Ronin character, because you get that cool sequence with him at the beginning of Endgame, and the spiraling that he had before he came back to kind of help with everything. But I'd almost love to see like a Ronin series, even where he is down that dark path of the snap and losing everything and losing his family, and what that sent him on to get him to Endgame. That'd be a fun story to tell, even if it were like almost like a Punisher-esque special where it's like his own thing for like an hour and a half or whatever you wanted to do, to kind of go on that journey with him to see what happened from the snap to when he came back for Endgame. But that would be a fun avenue for a story to tell. But good on him for not underselling himself and just taking far less than what he's worth, just because some accountant at Disney think that's what he's worth. Like, good on him. I'm happy for it.
Yeah, I'm happy that he stood up for himself in that, and we'll see if that ends up leading to Hawkeye never showing back up, or if they end up bringing somebody else in to play Hawkeye. But the fan backlash is probably going to be big. Like, Hawkeye was still kind of a minor character throughout the Avengers, but for the most part, everyone has loved and enjoyed what Jeremy's like, because he does seem like such a great guy. And
for sure,
you want to see, especially after his accident, good things happen for him. And the first main big thing that comes out after his accident, I mean, he's been filming his show and other stuff like that, but the first real interaction with Marvel again is something like this. It does kind of damper things a little bit.
Yeah, it would be a cool moment if they could work it out and get him back in the fold. But time will tell. We'll see what happens.
Well, sticking with Marvel and the MCU, we have our film review of the week in Thunderbolts. So this is, it mainly follows Yelena. We're starting it off and we're seeing exactly what's going through Yelena after Black Widow. This is, after Endgame. We're seeing what's happening. But, we've kind of got this team that's been put together. Now we understand how it's been put together, is because Valentina, she's currently under impeachment hearings, and she's been sending out Ghost and Yelena and all these other hero, anti-hero type of characters out to do various missions and killings and other stuff for her. But now she's under impeachment and she's trying to cover things up. So we have all these characters ending up meeting up in a clash that they don't understand why they're all there. And when they finally do realize, it sets off this really interesting kind of family dynamic, that you have all these characters that have their darkness and their mystery and hardships, and you've kind of bringing them all together with the Red Guardian, who has some depth in here, but David Harbour is so fun and over the top as a Red Guardian. You'll have scenes where everyone's kind of a little more somber and everything else, and they're not really reacting, and then you have him, yes, just screaming out. It's such a great way to cut that tension, because there is a lot more drama and heart and emotion than I expected to see in this film.
Yeah, and they do a good job of diving into like mental struggles and everything like that, because what you really have with Yelena is she's kind of questioning her place in the world, really, and where she stands. Like, she's so burnt out on just being used as an assassin or what have you, and she's looking for a way to get out or make it worth it. So you have a really interesting conversation she has with, Valentina, where she's like, hey, I'm doing this job, but this is the last one I want to do for you. I want something more public facing. I want to have a more prominent role. I want what I do to have meaning and get recognition. She's searching for this validity that she feels like she needs, because in the beginning she talks about her struggles with it. She's just like oh ho hum, another day of doing this, does it all matter kind of thing, and she's just going through a very real personal struggle that is kind of the central theme in this movie that a lot of these people have. Like, they have their own issues and worries and things, and you have one of, in my opinion, the highlights of the film, as well as John Walker. Like, that character, like, he just, if you've watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he plays, the next Cap. Like, he's the guy that, comes through, and he is, the guy who was actually Captain America for a minute. And they have a lot of fun with that, and there's, jokes and stuff like that tied to that. But all of these guys are going through very real personal struggles, and you get what's essentially kind of a forced team up with these guys who realize they've all been sent to take each other out, and that's where they've been, tasked to do. And they come to the realization that Valentina sent all of them, but it was more like a trap to kind of tie up a bunch of loose ends. And that's where the bonding for them is, to try to work together to escape and get back. But now where do they go moving forward? What's their
And they're
plan?
kind of stuck with each other. Like, they keep moving from one piece to another. Like, well, we don't really plan or act like we're going to stay together, but we kind of have to get through this.
Like, circumstances kind of force your hand to kind of bond, and they go through this long bonding experience in the movie. But man, I love the tone of the film. I love the pacing of this movie. I love the message overall, and it's coming to grips with, your place in the world and dealing with very real struggles. And, it's okay to feel these things, but it's good to have people to lean on, to have it. And it's a really good positive message that comes out of this film, but they do such a good job of taking you on this journey of what a lot of people in life really go through. And it's like a lot of interpersonal struggle to, find your own acceptance, find your own place in the world, find your happiness, find what, feels like gives your life meaning. And just because you don't have a family, or just because you don't, X, Y, or Z, like, it doesn't mean you don't have value in the world. And it's a really good story and a really good message that comes across in this film.
Yeah, you got a lot of these characters are more considered the side characters, even with Bucky and the Winter Soldier's always kind of been the side piece of Captain America, and what if he can do his own thing. And of course, we've got him in this movie that he's a congressman and he's trying to deal with that. He's got a really funny press conference where they're asking about stuff, and he's just like, we really need to get to the bottom of this, and find out, this is not right. And okay. Like, he does not care to do that part of it. Like, we don't really get to learn, and there's going to be some light spoilers in here. We may even have a part towards the end where we do some deeper spoilers towards some of the ending and the credit scenes and stuff, because there are 2 credit scenes, and make sure you stay through all the way to the end, because that last credit scene is almost 3 minutes long. It's the longest post-credit scene that they have ever done so far. But Bucky's kind of struggling with his own thing, because, after Captain America and the Winter Soldier and all that, he's trying to figure out his place as well. Yeah. And he becomes a congressman, but he doesn't really fully feel like he fits in there. But we do get some of that, what I talked about last week, what I was hopeful for when we came into Thunderbolts, that we were going to get some more of that classic Winter Soldier action. I think we do. We got him on the motorcycle stopping a convoy, and we got a few other things just kind of looking cool and doing superhero poses and stuff, like wrapping up the cable and punching the ground with his fist. We also get some humor, because we've seen in the trailer that he washes his arm in the dishwasher and spills stuff all over his shirt. So you get a little comedy and humor and depth and action. But I did love the depth of the emotion, because like you said, she's dealing with a lot. Like, she's gone through the widow program, and she's got everything that's happened because of that. But, she lost Black Widow. She lost her sister, and she doesn't really know how to deal with that. And when that happened, Red Guardian kind of disappeared. Her dad just wasn't there and wasn't around, so she was just on her own, lonely, bouncing around. And Florence Pugh she's been fantastic in everything, but she gives one of the best performances in a Marvel MCU film in a very long time, because she brings you such depth and heart, and she's very key to the main overall story, because as this ragtag group is brought together by Valentina to potentially kill him, they end up running into Bob, who Lewis Pullman must really love playing Bob's, because Top Gun Maverick, he was Bob. Yeah. You got him back as Bob here as Sentry, which I think he did a good job, because he's supposed to be a guy who just is gone through experiments and he doesn't really know what's going on with himself, and he has conflict because there's multiple parts to who Sentry is, that his darkness can bring out so much more darkness than anybody could ever imagine. But you have such a great connection between Yelena and Bob, because she sees almost as a protector to him, but also sees kind of that same kind of lonely, lost, I get what you're going through, I get the emotion, I get what you're feeling. And I just love what Florence Pugh did in this movie. She was so good. Like, action-wise, she was great. There's plenty of humor, and she does humor so well. Like, she can do humor to serious so easily and effortlessly that she just was fantastic. And everybody did their job great, but Florence is definitely a standout in this film.
Yeah, she's absolutely phenomenal. She gives an amazing performance here, and she kind of becomes like this de facto leader because of experience and her ability to connect with people. And that's what I really love about this movie, as opposed to other like superhero movies. Like, it's a superhero movie, but it's more of a human movie. Mm-hmm. Like, it's more of a humanity, because they're very aware of the fact that they're not physically gifted like the Avengers. And like the whole point is, like, you're not the Avengers. We're not the super strong, can punch our way out of any situation kind of thing. We are this group of misfits who have no business being the heroes of the story, and us finding ways to do that from within ourselves that don't require us to be superhuman, to kind of, like, we could still save the day and not have all these powers and abilities, but it's our heart and our ability to connect with people and work together. It's a really fantastic, like, human told story in the superhero world, because you have some of those elements, like with Sentry, who's this, unstoppable, almost godlike. He's given almost godlike abilities, and that plays out and manifests itself in a real way in this film too. But it's such a well-told story of, finding your place in the world, finding that strength within you, while also coming to the realization that you don't have to face it all alone. You can have people in your corner that support you, and how powerful that is to kind of help you become the best version of yourself. And that's kind of the message throughout the story, that I love the way they navigate it and tell it here, because, like I said, Florence Pugh is just a phenomenal actress in her own right, and she just chews up the scenes in literally everything that she is in. Yeah. And she's very much at the forefront in this film in the best way possible. She is outstanding. I will literally, until the day she stops acting, see everything that she's a part of.
Yeah, and her and David Harbour, there is one scene I'm not going to spoil. It's towards the end of the film that they have a scene that's just them together, and it's one of the best scenes in the movie, because you get what you don't get in a lot of superhero stuff like this in the Marvel, of that emotional connection between a daughter and a dad, but also superheroes and between each other, and they just lay it out all emotionally. You should get a little humor, but it's so genuine and heartfelt within it. Like, that was such a great scene between those two that just got you an extra gut punch of emotion when they were talking about it. But there's some really unique stuff when it came to Sentry, and what else happens with him and how they deal with things, and some things that catch you off guard that you didn't kind of fully expect. And going back to what you said about John Walker, about U.S. agent stuff, I also think there was some real life stuff that they kind of touch on with that, because when he was wearing the helmet, and when he first showed up as U.S. agent, there's a lot of people mocking him and making fun of him, because just how his facial structure and everything filled out the helmet. They were making fun of how he looked and everything. And so he comes back with a full beard, and there's some discussions you feel that's kind of touching on the real life aspects of people kind of bullying him for his appearance in a Marvel character, and how the helmet fits. And because there's a conversation like, do you like the helmet? Really? Like, yeah, I like it. You can feel some stuff that's like kind of touching on that
meta.
real life controversy over his look, and you have a feeling that beard is kind of another touch on, okay, well, let's see how I look in the helmet and the beard and stuff. And he gets some fun stuff. You also get some emotional depth. I would say the story is solid overall. It tells a really great story. It's simple, but in a good way that it's simple, that it goes from point A to point B with a few kind of mysteries mixed in, but for the most part it's just telling a simple story, but it is so well acted, so well done, that I really enjoyed it. It's something different from the MCU that it does kind of feel like a setup movie, but it has enough of its own emotional depth and impact that I feel like it stands on its own really well, but it is kind of leading us to what we're going to be seeing moving forward a little bit here, because we know the MCU movies have to be connected, because after this one you have the Fantastic Four, which is told in an alternate universe, and then after that you've got Spider-Man 4 and you have Doomsday and stuff. So what's coming out has to have some sort of tie-in for what they're going forward, and there's some really fun tie-in stuff to it. We do get an answer to why there's an asterisk on the title, which maybe we'll talk about when we get to that spoiler part to it and stuff. But if we want to go ahead and go into the spoiler part, we can.
Yeah, I mean, this is a heavy spoiler from here moving forward, because we have to talk about some of the stakes of stuff and how the film ends and where it's going to project to where we're going forward. So we can't ignore that completely, right?
So if you don't want to be spoiled, make sure you jump to our wrap up. It'll be in the timeline on the description of the video and on the audio side. So go ahead and jump ahead if you don't want to be spoiled by anything.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So the way this film ends is, everything's hunky dory, everything comes together. They make it through. There's obviously one character that was killed very early in the film that was kind of surprising, but they were going to be inconsequential to the story, unfortunately. My condolences.
And there was tons of controversy over Taskmaster from Black Widow as well, because we're in the heavy spoilers right now, because Taskmaster does end up losing her life in here, but there was, and again, it feels like something else of the response to fan backlash, because she showed up in Black Widow, but it was a he. They changed it to a she. They weren't happy about her look. I like the look in here,
sure,
but you didn't get a whole lot of scenes with her.
Yeah, I mean, literally right at the beginning of the film. But by the time they come here, it's all about them trying to stop Valentina. That's what their main goal in this entire film is, to stop Valentina. They get sidetracked by Sentry, who is a creation of Valentina. You come to find out in some of the dark black side projects that she was working on and things like that. But it all wraps up in a good way, and they feel like they finally got Valentina cornered, and she's very coyly trying to lure them in, but
it's very over the top.
Yeah, it was very
part.
Trying to lure them in, and they step through into this tent and come out the other side thinking they've got Valentina where they want her. And then there's this press conference that Valentina is very smartly put together to kind of save face here. She's like, hey, I'm not this evil person you claimed out to be. As a matter of fact, I've put together the Avengers, and here they are. And that's kind of the
new Avengers.
They're called the New Avengers. So they play along with the whole Thunderbolt theme throughout the entire thing, where it was the name of Yelena's youth soccer team that was sponsored. And they have some fun. They have some fun in jokes about that throughout.
So joking about who sponsored the soccer team. They lost every single game. They're called the Thunderbolts, sponsored by blah blah. But it's such a big argument between them. It's so funny and real that becomes such an issue that. Well, we're calling ourselves the Thunderbolts right now, but who sponsored us? Right. That's what really matters.
Yeah, it's so funny, but it's a fun joke throughout the entire thing. But Valentina does introduce them as the New Avengers, which, if you've watched Captain America: Brave New World, the whole thing with the president was wanting, President Ross was wanting Captain to re-put the Avengers together, and that was kind of a theme throughout that movie, and it's kind of carried over into this one, where Valentina's proclaiming them to be the new Avengers that she's assembled. So you have this group now with it's the asterisk means Thunderbolt, the new Avengers, right?
Yeah, Thunderbolts is actually new Avengers.
So they're going to be presented as that moving forward, right? And that's where we kind of get into our mid and post credits scenes here, especially the post credits, because I kind of want to jump past the mid credits one really quick because it is so important with what's coming forward. So a lot of the credit scenes are around like headlines saying "Not my Avengers." Who are these people? Who are these guys? We don't know who they are. Why are we supposed to accept them as the Avengers? And then you get to the end credits scene where it's a little bit forward. You've jumped ahead just a little bit, and you have them acting as the Avengers working because the building Valentina bought was Avengers Tower. So that's where a good chunk of this stuff takes place. And they're working in Avengers Tower, kind of working as the Avengers now. You have
brand new suits for all of them, which including Bucky has one of his comic suits.
Which is really cool looking. But then they get this notification like, hey, satellites are picking up images from out in space about something making its way into the atmosphere, and there's a little fun back and forth on Bucky, who has much more Avengers experience than anyone else on the team, is telling Yelena what to do, basically, where he's just like, hey, I know you're the leader, but hey, you should pull up this satellite, have this satellite imagery, pull up this, that, and the other. So she tells it to do it, and there's some fun like stuff, and I want to come back to David Harbour in a minute because he makes a funny
I was going to touch on that if you didn't.
We'll get to it at the end, but let's get this out of the way here. So they pull up the image and you see the ship flying, and it's a very familiar spaceship if you're a comic book nerd, but they hone in on the logo on the ship.
Yeah, the ship kind of tilts a little bit.
It tilts just enough to where you see the number 4 on the ship, which is very obviously the Fantastic Four making their way in. So this is going to tie into obviously the next Marvel film. Fantastic Four is coming out in July, but you see them, like, we know they're coming into our world now, and you know that's where the film is going to be heading for Fantastic Four. So you get this teaser of Fantastic Four making their way onto the Earth that we know from the MCU. So a lot of exciting things to talk about moving forward.
And I do want to note that last post-credit scene was filmed like 4 weeks before the movie released, and it was filmed on the Doomsday set by the Russo brothers. Yep. So the original director, Jake Schreier of Thunderbolts, he was there and he watched it, but it was the Russo brothers who did it because they were getting everything ready for Doomsday. So we would assume this is also, again, I think we've already got confirmation of a few, but this makes sure that, well, these new Avengers are going to show up in Doomsday because they see the Fantastic Four. But we got we're seeing exactly how they're going to fit in here, because we did get Sebastian Stan and a few others and Florence Pugh and all those confirmed, but now we know that, they're going to show up as the new Avengers. But we also get a little more story within. Again, this post-credit scene was 3.5 minutes long. It was the longest one they've ever done. Bucky is talking about, and they're looking at different things, at how, well, there's a little controversy now that they're the new Avengers because Sam, Captain America, is starting up the Avengers again. And so he is taking offense to them being called the new Avengers. And, Bucky's asked if he's talked to him. I've talked to Sam. It didn't go very well. So you get David Harbour's Alexei, the Red Guardian, shows up. I've got everything fixed and settled. And he comes out with what looks like a racing jersey that has the new Avengers with a Z on it. He's got like Tide patches and sponsorships all over him. It's good. We just put a Z. Everything's...
And they're just like,
no. They're just looking at him like, come on. Like, no, that's dumb.
I've come out of this movie just with a full-blown stance of we need to protect David Harbour at all costs, too. I love him in Stranger Things as well, but he's so good in this movie at just cutting through that emotional tension that we get with just... He's so funny, but he gets heart too in this film. Like, he gets a little emotional, like you said. That scene with him and Yelena is very powerful that they do, and like her monologue in that is amazing as well. But he gets a little bit of serious too. But man, when he's funny, man, he is so good.
Especially the mid-credit scene.
The mid-credit scene is hilarious as well. So go ahead and touch on it.
It's in a grocery store, and you have him just like a woman is looking to buy cereal, and you have David Harbour there, you have Alexei there, and he walks over and he stands in front of the Wheaties. If you've been to a theater in the last few months, you've seen the giant Wheaties box. You've got the joke earlier in the movie, but it's a Thunderbolts or the new Avengers on the Wheaties box, and he's like, hey, but this, and he's being kind of creepy, and he holds it up to his face, and he ends up handing it to her, and she's like, okay, thanks, and she grabs it, and she goes off, throws the box down, and just like takes off away from him. Like, oh. It was so just hysterical.
Funny. He's so good. Like, he really helps, like, just cut through a lot of the tension in the movie, and his role in it is just fantastic as well. And I come out of that just saying, protect that man at all costs, because everything you see, like doing the press for the film and everything, he's just, you could tell how much everybody loves working with him, and it just really comes through in this movie as well. It's just, I've got a lot of love and appreciation for this film, for everything that, everything that they touch on, and it just comes together so well. It's one of, in my opinion, the better MCU films we've gotten post Endgame, I would say, and I would put it in the mix with some of my favorites so far, just as my initial reaction to it coming out of it.
I do want to touch on one more heavy spoiler aspect. Of course, Sentry, we've talked about how there's darkness to his emotion and everything, and he ends up becoming the Void, this dark character that's just, which we think is killing people. They're just destroying, disappearing into shadow. And we get Yelena stepping up to him and stepping into it and disappearing. And that sequence was amazing. Like, it was such a trippy, wild, as you're going through her emotional state. She's breaking into other things throughout her life and then breaking into Bob's and stuff. But we get one sequence with her where she sees herself next to a bathtub with a bottle of alcohol and her eyes open, which I wanted to see if you got the same feeling that was basically like a suicide by alcohol that she was doing. Like, she was trying to drink herself to death because because, I mean, she's passed out, but her eyes are open. She's motionless and saying, like, all right, it's been dealing with depression and mental health, but I think it also dealing with potential suicide by alcohol there, because she was trying to drink herself to death. She was tired of being so lonely.
Yeah, she was lost, and it's a big central theme of the movie, and it's a very powerful. That's why I say she's so good in this, because she gets all of that emotional stuff across in such a really powerful way. Like I said, she's so captivating on camera anyway, and she really helps elevate this movie to another level, and you just go to show, like, how much she can carry a movie on her own, but she's so good, and it kind of shows why she's, like, the de facto leader of this group, because she's gone on so much of this journey already, and she kind of comes and has a little bit of a full circle moment where she's kind of accepted where she's been, but she's hopeful about where she's going in the future too. And it's kind of like the message here. Like, she gets it, but she knows that it's okay to lean on other people too. Like, she's kind of found that, and it's giving her the boost that she needs to kind of move forward with everything. But yeah, it was really powerful stuff, man. And like you said, it touched on a very heavy moment for her. And I'm glad that they included that in the movie too, because it's a very real thing. Like, people that struggle with depression a lot of times don't see light at the end of the tunnel, and it's a really heavy thing to talk about, but I think they brought it across on this movie in a very good way.
That's what I really like about the film, is that I wasn't afraid to deal with emotion, and real emotion, because we've had emotion, other things that happen throughout the MCU so far, but it's done with some tongue-in-cheek, or it's not really sat on for a while. But this is really dealing with each character has her own thing. Even Ghost kind of gets a little less than everybody else, but we know from Ant-Man and everything that she has her issues and what happens with her, and that she's still trying to find her place and purpose. And we get to see a little bit more depth with John about what's going on with him, even though he doesn't want to fully talk about it. He's still just trying to play up that I'm a U.S. agent, but we get those flashbacks that he's dealing with something heavier. And Bucky, mainly we get that it's hard for him to give up being the superhero as well and stuff, and that he doesn't really fit in with the comic. But it's just, everything with Yelena and dealing with the depression and emotion that ties in so perfectly well with the Void and Sentry and his story and everything that's going through there. Valentina was a little over the top, like really over the top most of the time, which kind of cut into some of the emotion of it. I think Julia Louis-Dreyfus was great, but it was really over the top with most of her stuff. But we did get some darkness, that she is willing to protect herself by any means necessary. Like, she will kill anyone, destroy anything, do whatever she has to protect herself.
Yeah, and I think they fleshed that out well in this as well. to kind of explain why she is over the top and willing to go to the lengths that she's going to kind of save herself. And, that comes across in a good way here too. It's just, I walked out of this really impressed, and it's going to fall in line with some of these other Marvel films that I want to go back and watch a second time.
I can't wait to watch it again.
To go back and see it again, because I want to give it a second viewing. I almost went back and watched it again yesterday, but I had a couple things in the interim kind of keep me from being able to do that. But I might go again this week to go see it again, because I want to come back and reconnect to that, and reconnect to that story, because, and I haven't been able to say that about some of the recent Marvel films that have come out. I think the last one I went and saw multiple times in theaters was maybe No Way Home.
Well, Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Even though it is, but it isn't. If you're talking about it probably does go back to Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, as far as it really completely connected to everything that we've seen, that one for sure. It really struck a chord with me that I walked away very impressed with how they handled everything. And it's such a good human superhero movie that it goes down an avenue that they haven't really touched on as well, in my opinion, in the MCU with this, just realizing hey, these are real people with real problems they can't just superhuman their way out of it. They can't superhero their way or have any powers to lean on really to, overcome and, save the day that you see in so many other things. And it touches on that human element really well.
Yeah, so in the end, Thunderbolts is a breath of fresh air from what we've gotten in the MCU lately. It's a deep, emotional, grounded superhero story. We have majority of the characters are not superhuman, some of them do, but we deal with more of their human aspect of it. Cinematography, it looked great, sound was great, costume design was great. It really dealt with things in a different way. Florence Pugh was fantastic, as was David Harbour. Everyone did their role really well. I was super impressed by what they did here. I'm going to give it a solid 8. I think it was a fantastic film. I think it was one of the best that Marvel's put out in a while, and it really sets up some interesting things going forward to see if they're still going to deal with emotion and depression and other things in this way, because we've got a future set up for most of these characters here, but we got to know that some of their past is still going to be haunting them going forward.
Yeah, I was going to land on an 8.5 myself. I really, really got a lot of enjoyment out of this movie. Like I said, it gives you that emotional gut punch of things and talks about real life problems that people have in a very real way, and making it tie into this overall superhero story and everything. They include those elements, but this really didn't feel like a superhero film really, outside of the fact that there is an OP kind of character that they have to kind of battle in this film. But they touch on so many of those grounded human elements and coming through and things that are thematically not really explored in the MCU up until this point, and they do such a good job of bringing it together. Like you said, Florence Pugh is absolutely phenomenal as an actress. I will defend her until the end of time. Just everything that she does, and she chooses so many scenes that she has, it's absolutely incredible to watch her, and for someone as young as she is to be as incredibly gifted as an actress as she is, really helps elevate this film to a level that I'm willing to give this an 8.5 out of 10. It does set up some exciting things moving forward in the MCU, and while also holding those human elements to the core of the story, that just really marries itself in a really satisfying way that I got so much enjoyment out of this film that for me is going to have a high level of replayability that we haven't really had post Endgame outside of maybe one or two movies, but this one is back in that stratosphere of rewatchable MCU films for me. So that's why I give it an 8.5.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, it was a great movie. It was a lot of fun. It had great humor, but it had a lot of heart and had a lot of good emotion, which was just felt really fresh and good for that the MCU kind of needed. After there's been so much controversy over different films and TV shows and how they've done stuff, and about Marvel potentially having a disconnect from their fans and not having a great feeling towards how the last few phases. This does feel like it's a really good new kickoff point, and we enjoyed Brave New World for the most part, but this one definitely seems much more than that one, as a good way of moving the MCU forward and giving some good films that can surprise you a little bit but give you some great emotional depth.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one for sure. But Thunderbolts is out in theaters now. Please go check it out in theaters. This is one that is absolutely a slam dunk, can't miss summer blockbuster type film that is one that I think a lot of people are going to hold fondly. It's going to be one of the more revered films in the MCU moving forward. And it's a real kickoff to a lot of exciting things about what's to come. And I'm excited for the future of Marvel based off this film alone. And hopefully these guys get so much more airtime and involvement in these movies moving forward. It was a real pleasure and a joy to watch for sure.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, if you missed it, there are 2 credit scenes to stay for. Both of them are well worth staying for, especially the ending. If you're a big Marvel fan, we know you're already staying to the end, but make sure you stay to the end and see those 2 credit scenes.
Yeah, definitely worth it for sure. Now I want to move us into our TV review of the week. We have episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Andor Season 2. So like we've talked about before, we get these 3 episodes a week, and there's a time jump here where we left off with episodes 1, 2, and 3. We have, Cassian making his way to Bix and them kind of taking off and, going out of their way. And this is a very Cassian and Bix heavy, set for these next 3 episodes, especially with Bix and her, we were wondering how her emotional state was going to be coming out of the events that happened to her in episode 3. And that was paramount throughout these next 3 episodes to really get Bix back to, maybe coming to terms with what happened and, everything and where that's going to lead for her moving forward. And we get a really powerful 3-episode arc here that, the episode run lengths are a little longer than what we got in the first 3 episodes, but we get a real push forward emotionally here with everything that's happening, with the rebellion feeling like it's on shaky ground, but we get movement on Gorman and we get everything moving along here in this year time jump that we get in between the episodes of 3 and what we have now in episodes 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, and with the first 3, we kind of had 3 to 4 almost separate storylines going on. We had Cassian stealing the ship and coming back and getting captured by the rebels. You had Bix and the rest of the rebels there on the planet. You had the Empire and what they were doing. And so this one is much more centered on Gorman. Just about everything revolves around. We still get Dedra and Cyril's story, and along with the Empire, what's going on there. And we get, the rebels on Gorman and everything with Cassian and Bix. But it focuses a bit more on them. We don't get as much with Mon Mothma, she was a highlight of the first 3. She's kind of got a much lowered role. And we're going to start getting heavy spoilers with this as we get deeper into it, because this is the final season. We have 6 episodes left after these, so we're going to start getting more into the meat and everything of the story. But we do get some story with Wilman and Saul that we saw at the end. That we saw episode 1 kind of set up, but we get deeper as that goes on. So we do have a lot of different parallel stories going on, but majority of these 3 episodes all revolve around Gorman. And as much as I've enjoyed these first 6, there's no denying that it's very slow, that it is a very slow building, but the acting is fantastic and what it's doing. But I did leave after these 3 wondering where exactly is it setting up for us to go next, because it didn't have as big of a defined kind of push forward as we expect. We got some stuff that's lingering, and we expect that some stuff's really going to get explosive and big after that, but we didn't really exactly see how all this is tying into that end story, because we know we're building up to Rogue One. So where is this really sending us going forward? But again, at the same time, I enjoyed it. As you mentioned, Cassian and Bix, they are on Coruscant now. They're in a safe house that Luthen has provided for them. But Bix is struggling. She's not able to sleep. She's using some stuff to help her sleep, but we're seeing exactly how that's affecting her, and it's definitely affecting her going forward. But Cassian is sent on a mission by Luthen that he wants him to go to Gorman to see what's going on. He wants a little more information on exactly what the rebels there are planning to do, and that is the kind of the heart and the core of what these 3 episodes are about.
Yeah, it's very much more spy-centric, I would say. Mm-hmm. Like, you deal heavy more into the spy-type elements that come into play here, because you have, at the kickoff here for one of the main, focal points on Gorman is, there's bugs everywhere. People are constantly listening to other people, trying to get more information. And you really get a lot more of that in the forefront. So you have a little bit more definition of what Cyril's trying to do on Gorman here. Because you're like, well, how did he wind up on Gorman? What's going on? Everything like that. And come to find out that he's on his own objective from the Empire to kind of go and spy and kind of infiltrate the rebel group there to see what they've got going on. He's working very much in lockstep with Dedra, so you kind of get that understanding of what they're doing and what they're planning. And he finds a way into this radical group he makes his way to the leadership of this rebellion here on Gorman and meets with their head people and kind of ingratiates himself and presents himself very smartly, as a way that's, like this guy that's kind of wishy-washy on how the Empire's handling things here, and kind of plays that up to, ingratiate himself to the people to where they trust him they think they've got their guy on the inside now. And it plays out in a really fun way, but this is very leaning heavily into those spy elements, because you do have Cassian also is trying to, get his information on the rebellion that he can from, these people that he's tasked with going and getting in with them as well, to kind of see where they're at and how useful they could be to them, because Luthen has this stance that Gorman is just as important to him. If it's important to the Empire, it's important to him too. Like, he views it as this very crucial point in their plan and their operations. And you get a lot of the, like I said, the spy elements of not everybody showing all their cards to everybody, and is everybody really showing the agenda that they have? And there's a lot of will they, won't they type stuff that really plays out over these couple episodes.
Yes, we still don't have a full grasp of why Gorman is so important to everybody. Right. We get information that Tarkin had unleashed an attack on this group, where they have a memorial. I think over 500 people had died. So there was an Empire strike that happened on this planet, but we still don't know exactly why everybody's obsessed with it. We know that there's spiders there that have this material that they create that they kind of want, but we still don't know exactly why that's an importance. So there's still a ton of mystery there. And I still think there's a ton of mystery with Dedra and Cyril, because they are kind of playing the spies for the Empire, but there's still a part of me that feels like they're not being fully out there with the Empire, that they're still kind of almost feel like they're working with them and against them at the same time. So we don't exactly know what their motivations are. So there's still a lot of mystery. And the rebels that, they're very involved with the people and the government and stuff there, while also trying to overthrow the Empire. And they're questioning, the Empire is building what they believe is an army right in the middle that's covering the sun over the memorial, that they were promised that nothing would ever cover the sunlight on the memorial of these people. And they're very much angry at the Empire for being there, and they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and they're not being honest. And they think Cyril, getting him in there, like, oh, he's going to tell us. So he steals some of the information out of his computer, gives it to him, like, oh, he gave us everything and this, and it's an army and it's all that. But there's still so much mystery in play between all these groups, and we don't know, is this Luthen trying to get these rebels as part of the main rebellion? Is he trying to snuff out this rebellion because they're not doing stuff the way he wants or would want to go? Like, there's still, this set up a ton of mystery, but we didn't get a whole lot of answers going forward. So the next 3 or potentially has got to be something big that's going to unveil a lot of stuff. Like, we know for the final 3, they're probably going to be hour-long episodes each. So we got like 3 hours potentially at the very end to set up stuff, but these next 3 after this, 7, 8, and 9, are going to have to be some big revealing moments, because we did get some forward movement here, but there's still so much mystery still to unravel.
Yeah, a lot of this felt like posturing in this last, like, everybody's trying to position themselves in the way they feel is most advantageous to them and what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that's kind of the central theme around these episodes in particular, is a lot of posturing, right? So you get, like you said, Cyril and Dedra working on their own deal, where they're like, yeah, we'll give you information. We want the information to be accurate, because we want to see, like, what you're trying to do as well. And then the rebels are like, well, we're full blown trying to stop the Empire. But you've got Luthen's group with Luthen and Cassian, who are not without their own troubles and their own little back and forth, and they're squabbling a little bit too, that plays out through these episodes where, Cassian's starting to trust Luthen a little less now with, his interaction that he has with Bixen in one of these episodes, and they kind of have their own confrontation about it too. And, you kind of feel like the rebellion is not as strong as it needs to be, and they all have their own idea of how the rebellion should operate. And it's a really interesting dynamic that's going to play out over these next 2 weeks here to kind of see where it gets to, because how important Cassian is. Obviously, the name of the show is Andor. Like Cassian's like the guy who ends up becoming this overall rebellion leader, and you see where he gets to, so you kind of want to see how the rest of this plays out, because he is such a prominent figure throughout the rest of this. But you get some really interesting movement on these stories, and it kind of leaves things in a place where, like you said, you're not entirely sure where they're going in the next time jump. One of the things that I do say is a little bit definitive, and it's literally the last thing they show in the last episode, where you get Bix kind of coming back around full circle, and there's this lingering issue that she has in this, this image of this doctor that's, experimented on them before, and it's kind of really haunting her heavily, and you get that satisfaction of her going and finding him with Cassian and like setting him up, tying him to the chair and blowing up his office, and you kind of see them walking away from that with a little bit of confidence, and you see that walk from Bix, like, okay, well, I think we got Bix back, so now let's see where that jumps moving forward, because Cassian and Bix are they're the main couple in this, but you see Bix back on board and where she's going to be and how important she's going to be with Cassian moving forward in this, and you kind of get her coming back to the front, and I think her being more prominent in the stories moving forward as well is kind of the one thing I think we can kind of land on that's going to be a launching point for maybe where this narrative is going in the next 3 episodes, and hopefully it's back to Bix being this awesome, rebellion leader that we know she is. So it's gonna be fun to see her back now, to get her full circle moment in these episodes. It was very satisfactory. It was very satisfying to watch, her get that element of revenge by the end of this episode.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's, Cassian is a little more wary of Luthen, and he kind of disagrees with the rebels on Gorman. He doesn't think they're doing things very smartly, so he's kind of torn that he doesn't know exactly what they're going to do. And that scene was like, at first she thinks Bix is doing it on her own because she's up there solo. She takes him out, she shoots a guard, she's just walking away slowly away from it, as you do in action films and stuff, and you see it blow up, and I think you get Cassian showing up before it blows up, but you think she's acting on alone, as she hasn't been sleeping. Maybe she's doing this in the middle of the night while Cassian is sleeping and stuff, and she's not involving him, and this is going to create a big clash between them. But no, you get Cassian stepping right up with her, hitting that button, blowing stuff up. So could they be doing their own rebellion outside of the other rebellions that are happening? So there is a dynamic that could be going forward. And I think these episodes did have some great scenes between Cassian and Bix, because you do get more solidification of their relationship and their love for each other, and you get kind of how hard life is for them, because they're always fighting someone else's war and rebellion and all this and stuff, and when are they going to start kind of fighting and living for themselves? And that's what you get kind of at the end, like, I want to live for me, I want to fight for me, I want to fight for us. Like, they love each other, but they're constantly, he's going off on her own, she's dealing with her struggles from everything and has been off on her own. So there's a great relationship dynamic, just showing the different levels between both of them that they're dealing with, and to get that connection between them at the end with those scenes of like, all right, it's us together, we're going through this and everything together now, that it does set that up pretty well for the next part, to see, all right, so what is Bix and Cassian really going to be doing going forward? But we also get some interesting scenes with Saw. So we get Saw Gerrera back, a little bit younger, of course, as we're moving up into Rogue One, but we get Wilmon after all of this. He's kind of out on his own. He is delivering this device to Saw and his group of rebels, but Saul does things his own way, and he's like, you know what, I'm supposed to leave. Wilmon's like, I'm supposed to leave tomorrow. I can get your guys trained, but I'm leaving tomorrow. He's like, you're leaving when we tell you that you're going to leave. And it gets pretty dark and interesting between them because the guy he's training is messing up and not really getting it right, but he's going back to Saul and saying, you know, I'm pretty close to getting it, but that guy actually saves Wilmon's life because Saul's like, well, he knows too much, he's seen too much, we need to get rid of him. So we're looking like we're heading to the end of Wilmon, but there's a twist that you kind of see coming, but you don't see coming because Saul comes up to him and they're standing there together and he's asking him some questions and you get the answer and he pulls the gun out and you see Will's face. So he's like, all right, I'm dead. But he ends up shooting the other guy and Will goes off to help him with the machine. And we get a little bit of the origin, we think, of his mask and everything's going because Saul likes this poisonous gas that they're kind of mining and gets Will to take off his mask and kind of get lost in it and everything else. So it's really interesting dynamic on that side of the story. We know where Saul is when we meet him in Rogue One, but I figured in the next 3 we're going to have a lot more of Saul and his rebels and where that goes forward and exactly what's going to happen with Wilmon being kind of part of Saul's gang now because he's not allowed to leave.
Yeah, and Forrest Whitaker is just fantastic too. Gotta love like him having a role like this in the Star Wars stories too. But yeah,
and getting to be dark.
Yeah, he gets a lot of cool things to work with here for sure. But it's one of those things that, you know, I can see him being a focal point moving forward because we know how important he is to the overall story when we get to Rogue One. I have been resisting the urge so heavily to go back and watch Rogue One again, and I'm trying to hold off until we get through all of the episodes here.
I want to watch it when it finishes.
Yeah, like I want to make that part of my last week's watch, and I was wondering if we were going to talk about it like when we get there too. But like I really want to go back and reference that movie just to kind of, you know, see where we're going. But it's moving everything forward here, and I'm excited for the direction of the show. This next time jump is going to be interesting to see where everyone is because, you know, if you've seen Rogue One, you know where everything's going, obviously, but getting there and you seeing some of these early building blocks and these roadblocks that the rebellion has to go through to kind of all get on the same page. We're seeing that dynamic play out in real time. Like you get, you know, Luthen, who still very much moves forward. Like, hey, I'm doing this mission without you, Cassian. Like, I'm going to make Gorman a priority, whether you're a part of it or not. And Cassian's just like, I've told you how I feel about this. I've gone and observed them. I don't think they're ready yet. I think they're too inexperienced and too sloppy. And he's like, well, I'm going to send my own people there, and they go through and they have this mission, and it goes off the rails a little bit too. Like you obviously see this group of Gormans, they have a really interesting arc here, and you see how much they want to rebel and want to do things right, but they're still, like Cassian is right, they're still so inexperienced that something going slightly awry causes something like catastrophic and devastating by the end of this 3rd episode. That just really goes to show how, at least in this stage of the rebellion, ill-prepared they are to really handle what they have to do to be successful.
Yeah, and as you touch on, we get kind of Vel and Cinta who show up to help the rebels on Gorman, which is the first time we've seen them since, you know, Mon Mothma's place, where it was Cinta who drove Tay away, which we thought maybe there's going to be explosion, that he's going to die. Something happened there, which Cinta kind of hints to, but we don't really get a resolution on that. And we don't know if we, especially as how this episode went in episode I guess it's episode 6 now. It's a 3rd episode of this group, but episode 6, we don't know if we're actually going to get told that resolution of what exactly happened to Tay and what happened to them, because they hadn't seen each other in a year since that happened. Since, you know, she left to drive him away, they hadn't seen each other until they showed back up here to help out the Gorman rebels. And of course, things, as always, is going to go wrong with them. But as I mentioned, Mon Mothma doesn't have as much in here. We do still get to see a little bit of, well, she's still dealing hard with what's going on. She's in the Senate. We're seeing what's going on there. She doesn't agree with it. She's still very emotional. Her and her husband are trying to play things out, and we get her showing up to a party again. So she's, I guess in this series, she's going to be a very party heavy Mon Mothma, because we have a feeling, and we kind of have to by the end of this series, have to see what is the main event that does propel Mon Mothma from leaving the Senate and leaving everything behind to go full force into the rebellion, because she's still kind of playing all sides. So there's got to be something that we see in Andor here, which at least I hope, because she has been fantastic, and I want to see that moves. I would love to see her recreating one of those scenes from like we're not getting quite to A New Hope, but seeing her in like in a similar outfit and on one of the rebel ships and stuff, giving us a feeling of the other actress in Mon Mothma and everything, and bringing us there. But we didn't get a whole lot with her. We did get her meeting our first real recast in the Star Wars universe, is that Benjamin Bratt had replaced for Bail Organa. So we've heard mixed things. Like, we know health of him has been a little rocky, but also scheduling conflicts and stuff. But I think Benjamin filled in really well to take over. It's a very short scene, but I think very similar stature of guys that they got there. So I think it's a solid recast, but I'm really curious to see what was the true full reason why that recast had to happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I hadn't had a chance to dive into that really, but it was definitely a little bit of a shock to see him walk out for sure, because you're so used to seeing Jimmy Smits play, the role of Bail Organa here, that like having him recast here is interesting. But I'm excited to see what his involvement is going to be for this, because we know how important Bail Organa is to the Rebels.
No, he's got nothing to do with the Star Wars story.
A couple things he's involved with there, but yeah, you see this whole political stuff playing out for them, and Mon Mothma just really trying to walk that line of still trying to have one ear in this, like one ear and one eye on this, while the other ear is on the rebellion too. Like trying to walk that fine line, and you see what the crux is going to be, because you see her very visible frustration with how everything's going, with her storming out of meetings. Like she knows what the talking points are going to be, because there's that very interesting stuff where she's kind of mimicking what everybody's saying and kind of knowing like what they're going to say and how they're going to frame it. And just to see her just be fed up with all of it, it's going to be interesting to see what that breaking point is going to be for her, because it's coming at some point. Whether or not they explore it or how much they explore it in these next 6 episodes is going to be interesting. But yeah, I'm excited to see where they're at going forward. I feel this like moves things along enough to see where we really jump ahead another year, to see where we're all going to be at again. Like, I wish they'd have given us a little bit more definitive, but I think by the end, the biggest story plot moving through this entire 3-episode arc was Bix's journey. I think it ending with her, seemingly back ready and raring to go after, exorcising that demon that was bothering her. Like, it's going to be real interesting to see where she moves forward with that, and who the focal point of these next 3 episodes is going to be.
Yeah, because was that the true spark that ignites the new rebellion and the full rebellion that goes forward to take down the Empire?
Yeah, like it's going to be really interesting to see how these next few episodes play out for sure.
Yeah, so I enjoyed these 3. I do think it was well acted and had a solid story overall. It did feel a little lesser than the first 3. Like, I think it, as you said, it's just posturing. It's setting things up. It's doing a lot of interesting things, but it's something that I can feel a lot of people feeling that these 3 were really slow compared to what we've got. Like, the first 3 were slow. I think these were a little slower. So these next 2 groupings of episodes, these next 6, I think are really going to start. I think they got a lot of their setup, and now we're going to start moving forward to that payoff and where we're going to go. But I've enjoyed it. It's beautiful to look at. The acting has been fantastic. It's been a solid show so far. Like I say, if you don't like slow burn stuff, it may not be appealing as much to you. But I think if you're a fan of Rogue One and you were a fan of Andor Season 1, you know what you were getting into with this, that it's going to be a slow burn as we build up to everything. And I'm right there with you, that after we watch the last 3, I want to go straight into revisiting, and we may revisit it on here, revisit Rogue One, and see exactly how well Andor ended and led right into Rogue One.
And see how with that context, how much the narrative of Rogue One, plays out and makes sense.
And if it changes how you look at Rogue One based on all the information you've got from these 2 seasons.
Yeah, and that's why I want to go back and immediately jump into that. And I've been really resisting. I almost gave and watched it this week. I was just like, man, just to kind of recalibrate and see where they got. And, I know where the movie goes, obviously, but I really wanted to kind of marry those two this week. And it was really tempting to, not do that.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they do tie this into Rogue One, because we've heard that there's some actors that may not return from Rogue One to make an appearance in there. So exactly how much are we going to end? Are we going to stop at like scene 1 of Andor's appearance in Rogue One, and that's exactly where we're going to end? Is it going to be kind of almost seamless, or are they going to kind of? We don't exactly know, but I'm looking forward to know how this is going to tie into Rogue One. But all of the first 6 episodes of Andor season 2 are available to watch on Disney Plus. We'll get the next 3 on Tuesday night. This will be the final group that we get setting up the finale. We got 2 more groups of 3 and the series is over with. But I think they've done a fantastic job. It is a slow burn, but I've really enjoyed what they've done so far, and I'm really looking forward to see what these next 2 groups bring.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the way they push this forward, because like you said, it's a slow burn, but a slow burn in a good way. They add the stakes and give you emotionally invested in these characters, and they do a good job of bringing that to light. But I'm excited for the next 3 episodes for sure, and to talk about it next week. That's gonna be a lot of fun. But now I want to move us into our giveaway. We've teased it at the beginning of this episode, but for the last month we've had people enter. Thank you to everyone who took the time to enter into our giveaway. But now it's time to announce the winners of it. So for our first $25 Gold Star gift card, the winner for that, congratulations, is Briss. Briss will be reaching out to all of our winners here shortly, but Briss, congratulations, you are one of the winners of our Gold Star gift cards. The other winner of the $25 Gold Star gift card is Christina Duncan. So Christina, congratulations. Thank you. We'll be reaching out to you as well. And then the winner of our bottles of Mike's Hot Honey, we have Missy Piper. Congratulations, Missy as well. Congratulations to our winners. Thank you to everyone who took the time to enter.
And thank you to Gold Star and Mike's Hot Honey, who provided the items for our giveaway here. We can't show our appreciation enough. Make sure you support them. Go out. If you didn't win, go get you some Gold Star. I actually just tried their hot chicken sandwich, their new hot chicken sandwich last night, which is really good. So thank you, Gold Star. Thank you, Mike's Hot Honey. And everyone who wins is also going to get provided by us, a movie trivia game, along with a few other goodies that I have laying around at the house to provide. But thank you for everyone for entering our giveaway. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, congratulations to our winners. We'll be reaching out this week to get your information to get these sent out to you. So congratulations once again.
And so what's coming up this week is kind of an interesting mix of stuff after Thunderbolts, because we do kind of have this lull between Thunderbolts and then when Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible Final Reckoning coming out. So we have what's being hailed as a vicious horror film with Clown in a Cornfield. That will be out this week, along with, we just saw the trailer for this movie once in front of one movie a week or 2 ago, which is Fight or Flight. It's a Josh Hartnett crazy action comedy set on a plane. I think of it as like the Brad Pitt Bullet Train film, but set on a plane. Yeah. It looks like it could be a lot of fun. It looks like it could be really interesting. We also have Shadow Force, which again was another film. Like, we went and got to see some CinemaCon footage, and I think in front of Thunderbolts we had it as well, or one film we watched. It's a Kerry Washington action spy thriller film that looks pretty interesting, and one that I haven't seen anything on is another musical adaptation of Juliet and Romeo. Yeah, listed differently, not Romeo and Juliet, Juliet and Romeo.
Yeah, definitely one that I haven't seen anything on, but it's coming into theaters too. Shadow Force is another one that looks like it's going to be a lot of fun too. The trailer for that looks really cool. I'm excited to check that one out too.
On the streaming side, we have a Vince Vaughn comedy, Nona's, on Netflix on May 9th. Again, that's something I haven't really heard anything about. I didn't get a chance to check out the trailer, but Vince Vaughn comedy, you've piqued my interest some, even though he just did the, Monkey Bone on Apple TV Plus. That has gotten rave reviews, so it's interesting to see kind of him showing back up and getting a little bit of a resurgence and things here lately. On Demand is The Ballad of Wallace Island. So this is one I actually piqued my interest, but I never got to see in theaters because it felt It felt like it was one in there that was less than that 18-day window. It's, this guy hires the musician to come play at his island, but the musician thinks he's coming to play for a bunch of people, but it's only for this guy. And it looks like it's got a lot of charm and heart and good humor into it. So I'm really looking forward to checking that out on demand.
Yeah, we saw that trailer quite a bit for several movies, and really interesting to see that it had such a short run, but I don't think it was ever even really playing anywhere near us.
Yeah, I felt like we saw it up until Thunderbolts here. It didn't air in front of Thunderbolts, and then I see that it's out on demand. So I'm like, we just saw the trailers for it, now it's on demand.
Here it is. It's the world we live in.
But I am looking forward to checking out. We also got Alex Garland's war film Warfare that has gotten some really good reviews. Again, didn't get a chance to check that one out in theater, so I looked to check that one out. I know one that we both really want to check out that we haven't got a chance to is Queen of the Ring, which is a wrestling biopic that has a lot of stars in it that we like, especially if you're a CW superhero fan. You've got a few actors in there. Mm-hmm. And we also got Ugly Stepsister, which is a foreign horror film that I've slowly started hearing a lot about, of potentially being one of the better horror films of the year as well. That'll be out on May 9th.
Yeah, that's definitely one I'm hearing a lot of buzz for, and I'm excited to check that one out.
On the TV side, we have Poker Face Season 2 on Peacock, along with the final season, Season 3 of Blood of Zeus on Netflix. Both of those release on May 8th. And then we also have the BAFTA Television Awards on BritBox on May 11th. So a few things, Poker Faces I haven't checked out, but I've heard really great things about that one. Blood of Zeus, I think I'm about halfway through season 2. I haven't finished it yet, but I've really enjoyed it. It's a definitely different, darker animated tale of these tales that we kind of know, but giving a little bit different, darker look into it. So I'm really looking forward to finishing off season 2 and getting into season 3 when it releases.
Yeah, for sure. Those are ones that are definitely looking forward to checking out as well, with season 3 of Blood of Zeus coming out. It's a really good show. I've enjoyed what I've watched of it so far. I haven't watched season 2 yet, so I'm going to try to get caught up on that before season 3 drops. But there's just been so much that we've been trying to watch and keep up with. It's absolutely crazy.
We got The Last of Us going on right now.
That list of things, yeah. We haven't even made time to review that in here, which is crazy. But I know we're going to do like a full season synopsis of that one when it drops, which if you're watching along with that one weekly, a lot to talk about. It's got a lot of people, happy, upset, as the internet one tends to do for things like that, especially for those of you that never played the games. But, definitely one worth talking about. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Coming up next week, we've been given kind of a unique opportunity here. So a lot of times we'll go and see the new movies that are out in theaters and come and bring it to you, which we love to do. We've actually got an opportunity to do an interview with our first independent filmmaker. So we've got access to a film called Mr. Sandman that we have both watched, and we're actually going to be interviewing the director of that film. And we're excited to bring that interview to you next week. It's our first interview here on the podcast. Excited to check that one out, shine some light on an independent filmmaker. You know how much we love our support for independent film and non-big, blockbuster stuff, even though we go and review them all. But I'm excited to have this one and have the director on here to talk about that film. So we're going to have our interview with them. Plus, we're also going to be doing our breakdown of episodes 7 through 9 of Andor season 2 as well. So we're going to continue with that watch along. But I'm excited to check out this film for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to try to shine some more light again. We try to go see a lot of these independent films, those that get to make in theaters, those that, don't get to. Like I wish we would have got to, at Horror Hound, be able to check out some of the more independent films that were screened there. We were only able to attend a day, and we were wrapped up and covering a lot of the panels and stuff we didn't check out. But we really want to cover more and talk about more about those independent filmmakers trying to get their films out there and get seen, whether it be independent films that make it to theaters or those smaller ones that are just trying to get their name out there and get going.
Yep, so coming up next week, we are going to have that interview with director Matthew I. Schmidt, as well as the episode recaps of 7 through 9 of Andor Season 2. But until then, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next week.